Uh, Dear friends, I would like to introduce to you Mr. Ajay Goyal, who was the single largest foreign investor in the crisis of 2013, the banking crisis in Cyprus. And now we're talking during the next crisis. We didn't expect this crisis to come so fast to Cyprus, but we're expecting a new economic crisis, not only on our island, but in Europe and the whole world. And I would like to ask you, Ajay, the impact on the world economy so far. All of us, we know what sectors are already damaged. So there are airlines, the tourism sector, shipping, retail, especially the small business. But what are the hidden damages that are not on the surface? What do you think? What other sectors, what other businesses will feel the crisis impact very soon or feel now?
So I think till now, we don't really know when the economy will open up again. So the real impact, which will be on unemployment, is the biggest worry right now. In United States itself, the projections are that the economy will contract, the GDP will contract by 25% in the next quarter. That will be the biggest single contraction in US economy in its history. The unemployment could be 15%, it could be 20%. The second largest economy of the world, China, is also going to be very deeply affected. And we do not know what shape the US-Chinese trade war will take after this crisis. Let's not forget, there was a trade war going on, which had already damaged the global economy when this pandemic started. So there will be very deep and lasting effect on Chinese economy and Chinese trade with the United States. Coming closer to the third economy, the largest economy in the world, that is India. A country of 1.3 billion is in shutdown, complete shutdown. All production has stopped. It'll cause unbelievable suffering, especially to the poorest of the poor. Now you come closer to Europe and European Union. The effects are going to be dramatic. I mean, first of all, the countries will have to reassess how much they're going to invest in their public health systems, how much they are going to invest in their social safety net. Because as we can see in the UK, in Italy, in France, in Spain, the public health systems have completely failed under this crisis. And one of the most negative impacts that we are seeing is that all countries are looking more inwards. They're closing the borders. Denmark was the first country to close its borders and place military inside a Schengen zone. Now, all Schengen countries are talking about some kind of stopping the free movement. So we still do not know all the negative tendencies, all the negative results that will come out of this pandemic and how different governments will respond to it. All we know right now is that this is going to be the worst recession in our lifetime. It's going to be global, it's going to be very deep, and I think it's too early to talk about how we will come out of it. And in a recession like this, nobody remains unaffected. And
Let's
what
think,
IMF
what
said,
will be this world after the crisis? So the crisis is now. You said India, China, USA, even Russia, the biggest economies, they are closing themselves, and they also, some of them, they stopped. Like in Russia, for example, they have 1 month holiday. In India, you said operations are stopped. What will be the next step? So they will gradually come back. How do you see it?
that's a very important question, but I think we should take a step back and see
Okay.
what will the world look like a month from now, 2 months from now.
Yes.
Everybody can see that Russia is doing a little bit better than most European countries and United States. And that is because Russia has been a little bit isolated because of the sanctions. which is that while the world was moving very fast towards globalization, and this pandemic spread because of this globalization, freedom of movement, people traveling, freedom of trade, millions of people getting on aeroplanes, having holidays in Europe. So the conditions were ideal for a pandemic. Why did it not spread in Russia? No Europeans, no Americans, no foreigners traveling to different cities in Russia. So many countries now are going to say, we need to protect our population. Is this globalization a good thing? Do we need this very open and free movement and free trade? So I think we are going to be in a world in which globalization is going to slow down. People are going to question whether all these trade and free trade, all the free trade agreements will be under pressure. There will be more trade wars. People will realign, government and nations will realign with each other. Italians are saying, we are finding out who are our friends in these difficult times. Why the Germans are not helping us. Spain is suffering so terribly and there is no money. Britain has already Brexited, and we can see how painful right now Britain, how painful it is in Britain. So we are going to be in a world where populism, nationalism, getting out of some international communities, international treaties will become the norm. But is
And
there
we can
an
already
alternative?
see it. But I also want to say, for example, Europe as a European Union, it was a distribution of goods and services. For example, Greece should cut the vineyards because France produced wines, or the shipyards, yes, because Germany produced ships. Now every country, do you see, they will come back to producing everything themselves, trying to supply their population with their own products.
Exactly. And not only that, they will say, we're not going to take orders from Brussels that we cannot sell our wines to Russia.
Mhm.
Italy will say, Russia came to our help when there was a pandemic. Why should we continue sanctions on Russia? So the world order will change.
Mhm.
The behavior of national governments will change. The leaders who will be more nationalistic, more populist, will have much more audience and much more say in the matters than the liberal politicians who wanted to see one Europe and a more globalized world. So in a way, what I fear, and I don't want to see that, I'm a big believer in European Union. What I fear is that many countries would put pressure on Europe and would want to exit now. If they do not feel that Germany, Netherlands, France are supporting some of the poorer, smaller countries like Greece, Italy, Spain, Cyprus, then the populations will demand that they get back a sovereign control on their decision making. So before we come to how the economy will rebound, I think we have to wait and see how the global order will change. And this pandemic will change the global order. I'll put to you another simple thought. In the last 4 years, President Trump has been putting a lot of pressure on European governments to spend 2% of their GDP on NATO, on defense.
Mhm.
Now tell me, how many European countries are going to spend that kind of money on defense?
Now,
It
all
changes.
money are needed to expand the health system, to provide extra facilities.
Exactly. Which means it changes the NATO alliance, it changes the Atlanticism, it changes the relationship between the dynamics between Europe and United States, it changes the dynamics between Europe and Russia. A lot of things are going to change, and all those things in some ways are going to have an economic impact. The reality of the situation is the countries right now need a lot of money for unemployment benefits. They need a lot of money to help the poor and the ill that have been suffering because of this virus and other illnesses, because you must understand that all energy is now directed towards coronavirus. What about
Mhm.
all the other patients? Imagine the health system will come out of this so tired, so broken. How will they take care of all the other old and ill people? What will happen to the health systems of Europe? So governments will have to completely change their priorities. Now, where are they going to find money for it? If each time they have to call Brussels and say, give us some more money or issue some euro bonds, and Germany says, no, we're not going to issue euro bonds, it's going to create a lot of problems, especially in Europe.
Let's come to Cyprus. I would like to know, how do you see what Cyprus can do? So what I can see is that, okay, we closed our borders. Now we don't have flights, we don't have tourists, we don't have people coming, but sooner or later we will need to open them. And supposedly in Cyprus we have zero every day, there is no one sick, and we succeeded, and Cyprus is absolutely healthy. As soon as they open the borders and the flights are coming, there is a risk to bring it again and to start over. That's one question. The second question is business. Now most of businesses are closed and people do not work, and sooner or later they will get some subsidy from the government, which is not their full salary, it's 60%, and it's 60% not of 1 month but of 3 weeks. So people will have less money. Then they will allow us to walk in the streets, they will allow us to come back to the office. How do you see Cyprus economy? What this small island can do differently from other countries? What are the benefits of being small and recover soon?
So the IMF report about the impact of the pandemic says something very important. They say the poorest countries will suffer the most. So when the most powerful and the richest countries of the world are suffering, the suffering that will be on the poorest countries of Africa, Asia, South Asia, it's unimaginable. But secondly, they also say that now the inefficient economies will pay a very heavy price. Coming to Cyprus, yes, Cyprus will come out of it healthy. We are an island. There are advantages to it. In 3 weeks, the virus will be contained. And then after that, with some kind of a screening, I think we should not worry too much about a pandemic anymore. It will be controlled globally in about 3 to 4 weeks. And I think in Cyprus, definitely we will come out of the pandemic in about 2 weeks. But now we have to start counting our problems. First, Cyprus does not have a national airline. So we depend on foreign airlines to bring people to us. Now, all these foreign airlines have now grounded all their fleet. Ryanair has grounded 100% of its fleet. 80% of Lufthansa fleet is grounded. Will those airlines see Cyprus as a priority? Where will they fly?
It's too small. Here is the question being small. And
how many, first question is, how many of these airlines will survive? Will European Union allow countries to help their failing airlines, because European law does not permit it? How will these airlines survive this crisis? We don't know. Once they survive, how they will slowly bring back their services and which will be their priority sectors. Cyprus also does not have a shipping link. We do not even have a ferry to Greece. How will the movement of people, cargo, be affected by this post-pandemic world? Third, we almost produce nothing on this island. So the cost of importing everything will suddenly start to pinch a lot. People will start to feel the prices of imported products. And the unemployment could really spiral out of control. The tourism industry, which is going to be the worst affected industry in the world by this pandemic. And don't forget, we still do not know what preventive measures will be in place for the next 6 months about letting people travel. What kind of certificate will they need? Will they need a QR code on their phone?
Any certificate may not be valid. You make this certificate today and tomorrow in the airplane, somebody is sick and you got this.
Somebody sneezes and, people will go into emergency mode. So tourism will take It was doing very well for Cyprus. Cyprus was, the numbers of tourists were growing. There was a casino which was going to open next year. You know, everything was going very well for Cyprus for a while. Things were really looking up. The economy had stabilized after 2013. The unemployment was down. Things were really looking brighter. Then the passport scheme attracted a lot of money. The real estate construction was going up. All these sectors will be hit very bad. The real estate sector, for example, all countries are now trying to keep the money inside. There will be a very serious backlash in China, Malaysia, Indonesia, India, Russia, Ukraine, against anybody who tries to take his money outside the country. So tourism will be badly hit. We are completely dependent on air transport. We do not have passenger ferries connecting us to anywhere. Cyprus is going to be very painful.
But what to do? My question is there anything we can do to help?
So I think, as you know, Cyprus, we have some very bad habits in this island. And we cannot expect different results if we keep doing the things that we've been doing. I think Cyprus especially will be under the biggest pressure to completely change the way things are done here. We would have to be much more transparent. The quality of governance would have to be much better. Public sector pay would have to cut dramatically. People have to make sacrifices. And who's going to make those sacrifices? You see, small business has already sacrificed a lot. People have been sitting without employment. We can't ask small employers, small companies, investors to sacrifice. Public sector would have to sacrifice. There's a very large, and that public sector, unfortunately, is also extremely inefficient. The efficiency report, which came out last year, Cyprus efficiency report commissioned by Cyprus government, said it's one of the most inefficient countries in European Union. So for Cyprus, I believe this crisis should present the greatest opportunity of a lifetime to change the way things are done here.
And to change it very quickly and to be more efficient in a short period of time. We don't have much time for decisions.
I agree with you 100%. There's no time now, Natalia. This is do or die. Because if Cyprus faces another default, it's going to be impossible to recover. I just read on your website, and you know, you have there's a lot of clarity about the situation in how you report things. You reported that gas exploration has been put off indefinitely. I think that indefinitely is going to be a minimum of 5 years. So
5 years for Cyprus. It was this year when they should explore. We were waiting for it.
Yeah, but look at the oil and gas prices where they have collapsed, which means the global energy companies are going to be facing very severe losses. They're also going to prioritize. Now, because of the economic crisis, the demand in China and India, the biggest consumers, has slowed down, which means there is no demand for oil and gas anymore, which means that the biggest producers, Saudi Arabia and Russia and Iran and Venezuela, they're going to have to drop the prices of oil. In that price environment of $30, $35 of oil and gas, I don't know the price of gas, forget about big investments of $5, $7, $10 billion in exploration and pipelines. So with all those things gone, God's gift of tourism, gas, all of this gone, Cyprus has to do what it has always been doing, which is ship management, services, banking, but it has to do them more efficiently like Singapore.
And we need also to remember about digital economy. Cyprus recently, especially Limassol, start having the headquarters of so many IT companies, and they can work remotely and they can support this new economy. We went through digitalization so fast, the whole world made a step front, and now we are talking with you over Zoom. We didn't know Zoom exists. few weeks ago. Yes. So there are so many new things that Cyprus can do, being small as well. And I would not exclude the business of IT from the picture that you draw.
There's a hackathon going on right now, Hack Cyprus Crisis. Yesterday, I spent a few hours looking at, Cyprus has some of the best educated, brightest young people, especially in mathematics. I don't know, there's something about we all love to criticize, but actually there are a lot of very good things in Cyprus. The schooling system produces very good mathematicians. I was talking to my nephew who graduated from Trinity in Cambridge, and I said, so how many Indians and Chinese do you have in your Cambridge class? He said, Uncle, you'll be very surprised. There are a lot of Indians, but actually in my class, there are 24 Cypriots.
Wow. So Cypriots are talented.
But they don't come back to Cyprus because there is no opportunity for them here. So Cyprus has to, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. Cyprus can follow the example of Estonia. Cyprus can follow the example of Luxembourg. Luxembourg is now positioning itself, hold your breath, as the leading country in space exploration. Because today you can do whatever you wanted to do sitting in your room, anywhere, remote economy. So Cyprus government, politicians will have to kind of get away from their obsession with luxury real estate and tourism numbers. They would have to invest, the country should invest now in this youth power that actually the nation has invested in education a lot, but give an opportunity to these 10, 20, 50,000 very talented young people to create a new economy. What have we got to lose? There's nothing to lose. These people can create unicorns like Israel. Israel is just 40 minutes away. I'm always surprised that we only want tourists from Israel. We want gamblers from Israel to come and play in our casinos. But why we don't want to learn that Israel produces 5 unicorns every year? So there are some very important decisions in front of all Cyprus political parties, Cyprus government, but in front of the whole society. What are our priorities? What kind of a country do we want? And if we try to just, apply Band-Aid here, Band-Aid there, give a relief to this group there, this group here, and do election politics, that's not sustainable. Cyprus collapsed in 2013.
Yeah. And I also want to try the subject that you mentioned already about international things. Like the latest news is that Russia asked to change some paragraphs in the double tax avoidance agreements. And Russia, as you mentioned, other countries will also try to, that the money will stay in the country. Can you comment a little bit? What will be the impact of the decision of Russian authorities? And the letter is already sent. There is a formal letter sent to the Cyprus government asking to make these changes. And if the government doesn't make these changes by 17th of July, I think, this year, Russia will just withdraw itself from the agreement. Could you comment on this? What is the impact for Cyprus from this? Why it was done by Russia? And what Cyprus will be affected with?
So I think we should first understand the importance of this decision inside Russia by the fact that President Putin proposed this in his address to the nation when he announced the quarantine. The fact that the president of Russian Federation mentioned the end of double taxation treaty, he actually talked about tax optimization. And just so there was complete clarity about which country they were talking, next morning, Prime Minister Mishustin clarified in the cabinet meeting that it concerned Cyprus primarily. So yes, there are some other double taxation treaties, but it primarily concerns Cyprus. So we must understand what an important issue it is for Russia at the highest level. And now by mentioning it in the national address, this issue has become a public issue in Russia. Everybody's talking about it. Everybody understands what is the importance of this matter. Now, 40% of all investment going into Russia goes through Cyprus. Cyprus is the biggest investor in Russia. I will not go into all the other details, but it means that to service that 40% of money that is going into Russia, which we all know is Russian money, which is round tipped through Cyprus to avoid and optimize taxes and so on, it employs some of the best educated, some of the best professionals in Cyprus in legal, accounting, and corporate services. What Russia has done is not a proposal. It's going to happen. We should consider, as of now, the double taxation treaty to be dead and buried. Let's get over it. It's gone.
But you meant the whole treaty. Now they speak only about one paragraph to change this dividend stuff. But you are saying that the whole treaty, we should forget about it.
It's the key. I'm not a tax expert. I think we should talk to some, but my understanding, talking to a few people in the last few days, is that offshoring from Russia is finished. 2015, President Putin, in his State of the Nation address, said, we're going to end offshoring. People found some new ways to continue to offshore. I believe the messages have been very clear. Cyprus should end its dependency on, I don't have a better word, Cyprus should end its dependency on dirty money and start to attract good money, which creates real economy companies, which create real sustainable jobs, and that do not undermine the economic security of the partner countries. The same situation is happening in India. The leading proponent of Cyprus, the honorary consul general, a very prominent banker, has been arrested for laundering tens and tens of billions of dollars in India. There is so much negative publicity about Cyprus right now in India. I cannot see how double taxation treaty with India can survive. So Cyprus can no longer expect that flow of money from Russia, China, India, Vietnam, Malaysia will continue to Cyprus because some of the people who use Cyprus as a shelter, it cannot continue. It is not sustainable.
Okay, so we need to summarize our conversation with something positive. Everyone needs
something
positive things. So please, now, summarizing everything which was said during this 40 minutes, tell me please anything good you see in today's situation.
I have seen, you have seen enough crises. I have seen the 1991 crisis when everything we had in our bank accounts in the former Soviet Union disappeared. We could not access our bank accounts anywhere in the UK, Europe, because those were Soviet companies. And people told us, prove that you are a real company now, because there was a new country. And then we saw hyperinflation. We saw currencies being withdrawn. A crisis is not new for many of us. Maybe it is new for some people. I've seen enough crises in my life. So I'm not troubled by it. I think the most important thing is, how do we respond to the crisis? The crisis it's a global pandemic. It's not a man-made crisis. As I said, Cyprus, Europe, many countries were doing well. Some were doing much better than the others. Cyprus was doing relatively well. So we cannot blame anybody for this crisis. But how we respond to it determines how we're going to live for the next 20, 25 years. Are we going to respond in a manner that we leave our children and the future generations with a lot of debt and business models and economic models that can collapse with the smallest of crises? Or are we going to give them more sustainable, digital, innovative, climate sensitive, environmentally sensitive scenarios and situations so that we do not get hit by any international crisis so quickly? I believe Cypriots will react very quickly, as they reacted in 1974. This country was built after a war by people who left their homes with one shirt on their back, and they built this beautiful modern country that joined European Union and has not been dependent on European Union. I think we will see, it's my guess, we will see the same spirit in Cyprus. I think Cypriots can be very hardworking. They can be very innovative when it is necessary. And necessity is the mother of invention. Till yesterday, everything was fine. Nobody needed to do anything. Now there's a necessity. I think Cypriots will invent a new future. I'm very hopeful about it.
I would like to finish our conversation exactly on these phrases. So we are all very hopeful on that. Thank you, Ajay.
Pleasure to talk to you, Natalia.